Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And this story is so amazingly important that you need to absolutely pay attention because it will affect just about everyone sooner or later. We all know how bad the NHS in Scotland is. We all know that 16 years of SNP mismanagement, underfunding, abusive behaviour have resulted in staff morale crashing to new lows time and time again. Anything that goes wrong, they blame the staff, not the management. It's never the management's fault, but it is entirely a systemic failure. People are overworked, underpaid, under-rewarded, under-resourced, and certainly underappreciated. And this has resulted in a mass abandonment of the NHS. And most of these people, doctors, nurses, midwives, anyone, they're all sodding off. They're all leaving the NHS and they're all going to places such as Australia and New Zealand, where they're earning more money, the living conditions are better, the working conditions are most certainly better, and where they are more highly valued. Now, that can be fixed, but I don't think it can be fixed by the SNP. It needs massive investment, and we need to stop bringing in nurses and doctors from abroad, from third world countries who can ill afford to lose them just to top up our requirements. We need huge training programs. We need to bring in thousands of nurses, hundreds of doctors every year through our own training system and pay them well enough to retain them and to resource the hospitals properly so that they're not overworked, so that there's always sufficient staff and that no one is having to deal with emergency situations all the time. It's a big fix, it's a big ask, and I think it's beyond the SNP to do it. But we'll take a look at this story to see why so many are abandoning ship and going for pastures new. And of course the result is even worse for the ones that remain. Fewer staff, more work, more pressure, lower morale. And when you're ill, you don't want to be looked after by someone who's depressed. Here goes. Now, before we get into this video, I'd like to ask anyone who's not yet subscribed to please subscribe, because it's very important with these, not so much with the light and fluffy ones, but important ones like this, we need to get to as wide an audience as possible. And so if we can build the base, the customer base, it means that more people will see it initially, but it also means that the way the algorithm works, more people get to see it sort of on the random selections, which means that there's more of a chance of people picking up on this and being aware of what is happening in the NHS, especially if it's local to them, because the last thing you want is your NHS collapsing. So do please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It really massively helps the channel. Also, hit the like if you like this video. That also massively helps. That really helps get the videos out there so that people can be aware of the truth. Anyway, nurses abandon SNP Scotland as exodus abroad from the NHS soars, and it absolutely does. The Scottish Government was blamed for more nurses and midwives leaving the NHS for sunnier climates abroad due to poor working conditions in Scotland, with Australia, New Zealand and the USA the most popular destinations. Well, obviously because of the language barrier, you know. But nurses and midwives are abandoning Scotland's beleaguered NHS to head overseas, leaving the country with a severe lack of staff. And the SNP's lack of workforce planning in their 16 years in charge of the country is being blamed for this. Now, they've got no one else. They cannot point the finger at Westminster for this one. This is entirely their doing. They are in charge. It's totally devolved and has been even before before the Holyrood government. The NHS Scotland was always a separate thing. So 16 years the SNP have had to fix the mess that they've created, and they have failed abysmally. New data revealed that the exodus of health staff going abroad has skyrocketed over the last year, with nurses finding new jobs in warmer climates such as Australia and the UAE. Last year, 583 nurses and midwives sought approval from the Nursing and Midwifery Council to relocate abroad. And there's no real reason for these people to stop, because if all of a sudden you're told, oh no, you can't leave the country because of it, Well, nobody's going to take the job in the first place if they feel that they're going to be controlled by some unelected body. What, you can't even leave? You know, you've trained to be a nurse, you've got your qualification, now you can't even leave the country. No, we're not living in the Soviet Union anymore, you know. And the midwives, I've got to say, the midwife problem is even worse than the nursing problem. The midwife problem in this country is beyond crisis level. It's at emergency level now. The figure was a 62% increase from the previous year, and it's only getting worse. It's double the rate of 2018-2019. The most popular destination to emigrate is Down Under, with 359 submissions last year. This was followed by New Zealand and the USA. Because again, obviously, the language is going to be the big thing. But Australia are desperate. Australia will take them in because they know British trained nurses are very well trained. Staff working in Scotland's crisis-hit health service have reported stress and overworking due to a recruitment and workforce crisis. Now, the thing is, of course, as every nurse leaves to go to Australia, New Zealand, America, wherever, it leaves a shortage in the hospital they've left, which means the ones left have to work harder. And they're not being replaced, these people. So the ones that are left are having even more stress piled on them. They're more likely to either leave or have a complete nervous breakdown or stress-related breakdowns, thus making the problem even worse. It is a spiral of doom. The whole NHS in Scotland is honestly circling the drain. It's waiting for that final plunge. And what to do? What to do? Well, you need to put resources in. But when you're spending $8.5 million a month on spin doctors rather than real ones, there's half the problem. And then, yesterday we reported £140 million on a census that they didn't even need to have. Nurses and midwives who want to continue their careers in different countries have to seek a certificate of current professional status from the NMC and have to declare their proposed destination. Other popular nations for relocation include Ireland, Canada and the UAE. Scotland and Union unveiled this data through Freedom of Information requests. And of course, again, it has to be freedom of information. This is the sort of thing the SNP never want to publish because it is hugely embarrassing and hugely damaging to them. It is leading to the exodus of the entire health service. Chief Executive Pamela Nash, pictured there, has called the figures concerning, as working conditions for so many nurses and midwives working in Scotland's NHS are so poor that they've decided that their future lies elsewhere, and it's getting worse and worse. And of course, as I say, as each one leaves, it makes it slightly harder for the ones remaining. Something has to be done, and I think you've got to basically look at where you're currently funding everything that is not NHS and say no, NHS everywhere. 3/4 of all tax money raised, give it up. I would suggest there's 3 areas of tax should be employed until further notice, and those 3 areas should be healthcare, policing and education. They must be the 3 priorities and where the vast amount of money must go, because without those 3 you cease to have a society. Pamela Nash continued, our hospitals are already struggling to fill vacancies and replacing retiring medical professionals. They're not even the ones leaving, they're just the ones retiring. Now, hundreds more are considering leaving to work elsewhere in the world. The crisis in our NHS is not inevitable, and it cannot be blamed on COVID. No, because it's been going on for years. This is the result, she said, of 16 years of mismanagement from the SNP and the decisions that its politicians have made. And we all know it. I deal a lot, we've done a lot with Leslie. I might ask her if she'd like to come and comment on this story particularly. But she's been explaining that there's been problems with the hospitals way before COVID. This isn't COVID related. This is the systemic management side problem of the NHS, and it's the management not providing the resources to bring in more staff, to ease the workload, to ease the training, because nurses have to keep up with the training, new things happen, they're not getting that, all sorts of problems. And it's a resource problem And the funny thing is, the one resource which there never seems to be a shortage of in the NHS is middle management. Wherever you turn, someone is a middle manager. Anyway, Pamela Nash continued, perhaps if there'd been more focus on supporting our public services instead of obsessing over breaking up Britain, then our nurses would not be leaving in droves. The SNP Green government is in sole charge of the NHS and it has to take responsibility for this situation. It must now set out how it plans to replace these valuable members of staff and tackle the workforce crisis that has put too much pressure on our amazing nurses, and how it intends to make Scotland's NHS a more attractive place to work so that fewer people see their future elsewhere. Money. That's it. Money. But when you look that they're spending money left, right and centre, 100,000 on an independence minister, 2 million a year on staff working on independence matters, 140 million on a census not needed. They're going to spend another 20 million starting up a new Scottish veterinary service, even though there's a UK-wide one funded from Westminster. There's another 20 million. It's left, right and centre. There's all these little things where they constantly chip, because independence, because every single policy has to be seen through the veil of independence, and that costs money. And when it costs money, it means it costs lives. And that means, without a doubt, the NHS is massively underfunded because of it. And as we know, underfunding in the health means death. SNP policy, let people die. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Scottish Conservative Health Secretary Dr Sandesh Gillane said the figures were deeply concerning. I think the word terrifying would be better. He said the exodus should be an urgent wake-up call for the SNP Health Secretary, Michael Matheson. What can he do? He doesn't know anything. He's stupid. He doesn't understand how economics works. We've already seen that in previous videos. He doesn't understand his role. Scottish Labour's health spokesperson, Dame Jackie Bailey, added, nurses in Scotland have been bounced from one crisis to another under the SNP, so it is little wonder so many are seeking opportunities abroad. And to be honest, if I was them, I don't have a problem with them going. What I do have a problem with them going, because they shouldn't be going. But what I mean is, I completely understand why they have made that decision. If you were working in a stressful job, and the opportunity is to carry on doing a job you would otherwise love doing, but doing it for more money, less stress, and in nicer working conditions, then hey, you'd be a fool not to. So I don't blame them for going. I do blame the SNP for enabling the decision for them to go to be so easy. And that is exactly what it is. So, you know, you've got to have it that somebody has got to take control of this. And anyway, it's just more figures then about people leaving. But midwifery especially is an absolute crisis point. They cannot get midwives for love nor money. Anyway, I shall stop there and come up. But it is truly, truly terrifying the extent to which the NHS in Scotland has collapsed and is still collapsing. And as I say, it's circling the drain, and it won't be much longer, and it will have gone. Coming up. Perhaps if all the cabinet members weren't paying into private medical insurance and they had to use the NHS, things might get better. But you can guarantee every single one of them will be in Bupa or some such. Because they won't be the ones affected by the decisions they're making to destroy the NHS. And we've got to actually consider the fact that it must be deliberate. They're the ones making these decisions. They must know the consequences of these decisions. And if they're not, then they're being told. They're being told as the things happen. So they are aware. If they can't foresee it, they must be aware of what's happened, post it happening. So they are aware of the problems. And yet they're not curing it. So therefore, the very state that the NHS is in is deliberate. It's a deliberate policy. They have engineered this. They have made the NHS what it is through their deliberate policy. Why? Why would the SNP deliberately make the NHS this bad? Presumably they just don't like normal people. They think if we can knock a few out, knock a few grannies out, get rid of the sick, the infirm, it'd be all great for them. See, and when you start knocking out the ill, the infirm, and those sorts, that reminds you of a bunch of other people who, back in Germany in the 30s, did much the same policy. They're no different, are they? They're absolutely no different. They're both all fascist bastards. And it's no wonder the NHS in Scotland is falling apart, because they're deliberately doing it. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Please, God, do please hit the subscribe button. It's really important, because we need to get these sorts of videos out. People need to be aware, and it really, really helps spread the word. So please hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and for heaven's sake, don't go to hospital if you can avoid it. Bye.